Welcome back to the Unlearning podcast. My name is Stuart Delony, and I'm here with Karl Forehand and JD Forehand. And if you want to reach out and contact us, you can reach out to us at theunlearningcurvepodcast at gmail.com. You can also find this podcast on YouTube and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Because if you're listening to me right now, I'm assuming you're listening to a podcast, so we think you can figure this out.
Yeah.
So, we're hopping in with some news. We recently, depending on when this comes out, but recently for us, there was the Annunciation, a Catholic school in Minneapolis, that we had another mass shooting in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's something that we were way too used to, and we've gotten so used to it, we just know that we just shovel out our thoughts and prayers. So, Karl, what were you thinking about with the coverage on this?
Yeah, so we just noticed in this one, there were two children killed, Fletcher Merkel and Harper Moisky, if I'm pronouncing that right, 8 and 10, and 17 wounded, I think, at the Catholic school. At the Catholic school. We watched some video, there's some local coverage that we looked at, a link to that, and obviously the kid was deeply troubled. But the issue became, in this one, people are getting more vocal about thoughts and prayers, about saying thoughts and prayers aren't doing anything. And even religious people on the left sometimes are starting to say, yeah, I believe in prayer, but prayers aren't enough. Somebody's got to do something, and you guys aren't doing anything about this. Mike Johnson, especially, and Franklin Graham and all the sycophants around them came forward to say, hey, prayer is real important to us, so don't talk about our prayer. Almost not even mentioning the actual shooting and what might be a possible solution that they're working on, or when they were in prayer, did they discover something magical in their prayer that is going to solve this, or what are we doing? And so I don't think we need to take a lot of time, because in a minute we might read those statements, but I'm very frustrated with all that, because they clogged up all the airwaves with defending.
How dare you?
Why are you persecuting me? And now I'm having to suffer because I'm a Christian and I pray. And I can just imagine all the sermons that went on the next day because of that, and so on.
Which completely ignores the shooting. And it makes it back about them again, too. Like, oh, guys, I know those kids died, but I'm the one that's really suffering here because someone called me out for saying thoughts and prayers. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Mike Johnson said, don't make it a political issue. Don't make it a political issue. This is about evil, or, something along those lines. And Franklin Graham was just gross in the way he responded to it. It just seems like their minds are clicked off to caring for those children. Our society created a problem, and there is a problem, right? It's bled over into Canada and so on. There's a deep emotional, systemic problem, right? It has to do with mental health. It has to do with the way our society is, or access to weapons, the kind of weapons they have access to, and those kind of things. Those weapons were bought legally, all three of them that were used. And politicians, whatever politicians and churches and the United States in general is doing, is not working. We're not solving the problem at all. It's not going down. There's so many, we just don't even report them all anymore. So they resort then, when it's hard, to thoughts and prayers. The thoughts and prayers, our concerns are with you. We care about you, so we'll get reelected. But when they're called out on that and saying, hey, your thoughts and prayers aren't enough, they're not doing what they should be doing, then they go into defense mode, and it's all about how they're persecuted now. Totally takes the focus off of the real issues, right?
Then the real issue is that I think Franklin Graham had referenced this, that it's Satan is the real issue here. It's Satan. So, I mean, should we just get guns and then go and shoot Satan? And then everything would be fine? Is that how they work in these ideas? It's just crazy, because they'll do, and they will say anything to just deflect from doing any kind of gun control, any kind of checks, any kind of thing like that. It's their holy grail. You just do not touch it, or your face gets melted off in front of Indiana Jones if that happens in their party, because the guns are the big thing, and the guns are their love, the guns are their God, the guns are everything.
Yeah. JD, you can probably talk about being raised around guns and so on and responsible things, right?
I'm not a good one to talk about on the gun because I'm pretty like pro gun. But what I would say is, I think going back to what you guys were talking about, I don't think that people in power, whether they're people in leadership in the Christian faith or whether in leadership in the government, they have a vested interest in making sure things like this just keep happening, or at least don't get better at any sort of pace that really makes any difference. Because that's the same thing, whether it's in for a lot of these people in the way they want to govern, or with these religious leaders. They need people to be at the bottom. They need to be people to be going through bad things, because they just like Stuart was saying, can we shoot the devil? Of course we can, right? So as long as there's a constant threat that can never be assuaged, the money will keep rolling in, right? The votes will keep rolling in, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think, unless people are going to get serious about, and you talk about how, they spend all this time covering for themselves. You look how those, all the town halls are going for the Republican candidates right now, and even some Democrats, because they should get their fair share of shit too. But they're getting booed off stage because people don't like it. But that's I think the next step that people need to figure out is what are we going to do about it? If they're not going to do anything about it, what are we going to do? Because people have been talking about, we're going to change it. Just like the thoughts and prayers, people have also been saying, we're going to change it. We're going to protest. We're going to do that. Fuck all has changed. Let's be honest. It's, if anything, gotten worse. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to run candidates? Are people going to run for office? Are we going to stop just voting red or blue? Are we going to maybe run third party? But my point is, whatever people's solution is, we need to come up with something. Because I agree with 100%. Thoughts and prayers are great if you want to send them, but they're not fixing the issue. But neither is people going, well, thoughts and prayers are bullshit. It's like, I want to say that as well, but that doesn't solve the problem either. Where are we going is my kind of thing. Because I just grow tired of this debate, because it just happens over and over and over again. But what are we going to do on mental health? But the issue is, this administration is not doing anything about any of it.
Partly inspired by this podcast, the discussions we've had about acting locally, thinking globally and acting locally. Your mom and I have been able to learn about trauma-informed things, and as on Mom's spare time, on her own time, we've gone to conferences and so on and learned about that and put some of that into practice. And now I'm mentoring a kid, and I can talk to him about, regulation. Like when we met yesterday, I gave him an oximeter, put it on his finger where he could see his pulse, and I told him to focus on his pulse, and you could just see the pulse rate going down. And he wasn't that nervous to be around me, but there's a little anxiety when you walk into a room, and you can see that going down. One of my big things is we need to. It's not necessarily like severe mental illness, but it's the inability to regulate and the damage we do. My friend calls it the river of cruelty that keeps getting passed down generation to generation. And that kid was in a religious institution, a religious school, yet his emotional needs, he never got the attachment with his parents that he needed, right? He was saying, sorry, Mom, Dad, I didn't turn out like you wanted me to, and that was never there, yet he had an arsenal of guns that he bought legally. So we got to start doing what we can where we are.
Yeah.
I think part of our problem too, and is that we've become numb to this in America. We kind of just know, we just go through the motions. This is what happens. And we just, we issue our statement. But I feel like that this ends up the tragedies become more and more abstract. to us. Like they don't feel like they connect to where we're at or to us and our community or something like that. It's like, oh, that's something that happens elsewhere. And I feel like we have this dissonance in America that like, well, that just happens in other places. That just won't happen here. And that's the insane thing that we're seeing more and more with this happening over and over again. And it leaves me like, I know some of the answers are like, what are paths to responsible like gun ownership? But also, like, if that's the case too, like, or do we have like, I'm curious about this on the other side. Should we have like responsible thoughts and prayers? Like, we want to like regulate the people's gun ownership, but we probably need to be regulating what they're praying for, because if prayer does work, these thoughts and prayers aren't doing a damn thing. Or is it just like, yeah, I just pray for more guns. I don't really know what they're praying for. And beyond just well wishes, and this is just a PR thing. But like JD had said, we're just going to continue to repeat the cycle, and we'll continue to be outraged and upset and horrified what happens, and then we'll do it again next week.
Yeah. So it just, it always, just like all discussions about things that are difficult, not in my church, not in my town. So, I'm not as worried. It won't happen here. And then we had a principal kind of stop a shooting in a nearby town here in small town America. Guy came in with a backpack, and the principal detected it and physically subdued him. So it can happen where you are, and we should recognize systemic problems, whether it's racism or gun violence or whatever. We need to recognize those systemic problems, and systemic problems take deep, focused, concentrated effort. You can't just hope it'll go away, and that's what you're doing with thoughts and prayers. And then to be defensive about that and say, well, we're not telling you can't pray, but what we are telling you is you're getting paid to represent us, to fix these things. So start fixing something.
Yeah,
I would think we need to move.
If you think your job in Congress is to pray, put on a frock and go get a fucking congregation. You don't deserve. Yeah. Don't belong in Congress.
Yeah.
No.
Or go up on a mountain somewhere and then jump off. Is what I want to say to you guys. They're just fucking useless.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. It's been like that for a long time. We got the whole system kind of has to be done differently, I think. But
yeah,
like you said,
the thing that gets me, and it's getting gross. It's how people start to. It's almost like, was the shooter a Trump supporter? Was the shooter from the left or the right? And then we have to focus on these kind of things. What is all this? Oh, and it's kind of like trying to figure out. Well, at least he wasn't on my team. I feel better about that.
Yeah.
And again, none of this has to do with dead kids. Yeah. There's dead kids, and but somehow we have to do this in culture now. We have to be like, it's scapegoating, and then scapegoating the other side. And again, it just deflects from everything that's going on. It deflects from dead kids.
Yeah. I think honestly nowadays the discourse is basically just like own the chuds or own the libs. Like that's all anything is anymore. And it's like, it's not, not my team. It's a MAGA guy. Okay, well, haha, you guys are fucking stupid. And then the same thing, it's usually not. It's often like misidentified because they really, really want it to be a trans person, but like, it's a gay person or whatever, because surprise, surprise, everyone does, every group does violence to one another because we're all fucking human. But then, it's celebrated on the other side. But again, it's just, we can own the other side, haha. But again, like you said, it obfuscates from doing anything about it, which is, again, exactly what the people in power want.
Right. We had a kid in a religious school, which is supposed to be better, who didn't connect with his parents, who didn't connect with society, that had access to lots of guns, that no one ever intervened in his life, made a connection with him. That's a huge problem. If we're growing up in a country full of people that don't get that basic, I'm trying to think of the right word, attachment that they need. They never attach in a way. I mean, all of us have our issues, right? I'm a little introverted. We have social anxieties and things like that. But if we're not getting those basic needs, and sometimes that's food in America, we're not getting, food, healthcare, attachment, stable environment, then we got deep systemic problems, and somebody needs to start working on them. And what we can do is work locally and do the best we can, and try not to elect idiots anymore. I don't know how we're going to get around that. Anyway, that's another good question.
There's a lot of them. I mean, people can run for office, but it'll be fine. Don't worry. We're now socializing all the kids using AI, so it's chill. It's definitely going to be fine. Yeah. It's not going to. That's not going to be. We're definitely not going to have a huge, massive issues in like the next 10, 20 years because everyone just uses AI and fucking TikTok exclusively. Do work on local levels because it involves like actually talking to people face to face in a lot of cases, which is far better than interacting with anyone via like text-based conversation.
Yeah. So you're saying just make sure just when you're on TikTok and making your videos, just make sure they're hyper localized. Is that what you're saying, JD? Is that just the goal here?
Throw like a sepia tone filter on there so it looks like it's old. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. The nostalgia of human conversation and connection.
Yeah. Oh.
So what we're going to do over the next few episodes, we're going to do Karl's assumptions, because in this first one kind of is the topic sentence for the whole thing, that I have come to believe that and it's a belief, that all beliefs are assumptions. And that's what people usually say when I say that is, well, that's a belief, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's an assumption. So theology is assumptions. Mm-hmm. And in our denomination, we used to say, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. But how do we know? That some guy, the Dunning-Kruger effect, people that don't know much about things tend to assume they know everything about something. And that's how our pastors were growing up. And sometimes they're really undereducated, had just received something from someone else. And one of my assumptions is that if God is real, then he, she, they should communicate better to us. But so when I realized this, I began to explore the belief systems and so on. But all beliefs are assumptions. What's you guys' response to that?
Yes. No, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the idea that, especially when we talk about theology, none of this is provable. Nothing that we're doing in theology is provable. It's all assumptions. It's all just educated guesses at things. And it's amazing how many churches and denominations have built their foundations on assumptions. And I mean, wasn't there a parable about something about like building your house not on the assumptions of sandy grounds? But I think that you're absolutely onto that, Karl. I mean, I think it's all in how we hold our theology. If we're holding it very tight-fisted and closed-handed and saying, this is how it is, this is how it's always been, this is how it's always going to be, it gets you to really weird places because that can't be questioned. And usually if you do ask questions about it, people get very angry because it's messing with their internal pillars and structures and belief systems. And so, yes, these are assumptions because, I mean, even because, the Bible's conclusive about everything. It's pretty conclusive. It never contradicts itself.
Just violence, the thing we've been talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can find just about anything in there about violence, and on one side or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and if you're using that logic, then we can say, God bless the gun shooter because those children got to go home to meet the Lord early.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, they're worshiping and celebrating in heaven right now because that's what our theology tells us, even though, no, those kids are just dead. And this is sad and it's a tragedy.
Yeah. I was, trying not to give personal information away. I was sitting with my mentee. I was the mentoring with his parent. We had to meet with the parent before we got started, since we're under this program that was initiated by Tom Osborne called Teammates. And so we had to meet with the parent, and the kid started, for some reason we got off on talking about his dog, and his dog had died, and the dad had to put it down, and he had to go with him, and then his siblings made fun of him. And he started telling me about that, and he started crying. And the coordinator and his mom became uneasy because she said he's feeling big emotions. And they got uneasy and tried to just be happy, put on a happy face, So I don't know why I was telling you that. But anyway, go on.
No, I mean, I think you're speaking to the fact of like just how we're just told how to feel. We're told how to believe. We're told how to do this without regulating, without processing, without, using any kind of cognitive reasoning skills too. And when we talk about theology in this, it's really insane for people to be able to speak about things that they don't know about, but in such concrete terms. And it's really fun to watch what happens. I remember I had a friend that went to Liberty to finish up his degree, and he took a class on like Genesis, and I was like, tell me, how do they explain creation in there? And like, how do they explain the age of the earth? And he's like, oh, it totally makes sense. When God made the earth, it was like, boom, there's a tree that's 500 years old. Boom, here's a billion-year-old mountain range. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, and he was like, yeah, this totally makes sense. And I'm going like, oh, the mental gymnastics that you have to go through to make any of these things make sense, it takes you to idiotic places. And when you go to idiotic places, your view of God gets very idiotic from there and just keeps going.
JD,
I
what do you
think a lot of people overextend themselves with those kind of things because it's pretty easy to trip them up with that. But no, I mean, I don't know. I pretty much just agree with you guys with most of what you're saying. I don't have too much to add. It's definitely frustrating, but I mean, I don't know how you deal with any of that besides it's the same thing that, again, not to go back to like the internet and social media, but that we see with that is that people are allowed to spew infinite nonsense dribble on the internet, and people will just believe it because it's on the internet. I have students, which like in that case, like they're young, they're a little bit more naive and deservedly so. But like I've also had grown ass adults come up to me like, tell me some just asinine shit, and I'm like, that's not true. And they're like, yes, I saw it online. I'm like, what would you like to believe? Because I can show you a website with that fucking text on it. Like, what are you talking about? But we just have to teach people to like actually question things and, you know, test all things and keep what is good. Not to be too cliche about it, but like, that's what you got to do. You just have to like go home and do some check up on what people are telling you. You can't just believe people whole cloth. I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't. It seems simple, but it seems like a lot of people have a lot of problem with it. And it does. I mean, it takes a lot of work, I guess, if you're doing like theological studies to try to fact check your pastor because he's saying some dumb bullshit. But I mean, aside from that, I don't know what's going to change it.
Yeah, but JD, what would you do if you had students? Like, just let's hypothetical this. You know, if we're saying like the idea is all theology is assumption, what would be a different step in the learning process to move it from just being an assumption to some sort of process of learning or testing or that? Like, how would you pose something like that to your students?
I mean, my usual process is have them preview what we're going to talk about. So they should do at least a minute amount of research there on things that they're like not totally sure about. Do lecture in class with discussion. So then they would ask me questions if they had questions, which I would answer because I would have also prepared. There may be, you know, there might be some that they catch me off guard with, in which case I would say, okay. And usually then I'll incorporate it into some sort of like project or a homework or whatever. Okay, you guys go home. I don't have the best answer for you. Research it. You bring back me a project, and I'll bring back a project, and then we'll combine it. That's usually how the process for me works, is making them go home and kind of test it on their own, giving them some of the facts, and then having them try to connect the dots for themselves to some degree. Yeah.
In a way, JD taught me how to break that chain. Sorry. JD taught me how to break that chain, and I've watched younger people say they always start with, I think, or the way I see it, or instead of this is how it is. Because once you say this is how it is, you're trapped, right? You have the burden of proof, even though we hardly ever can prove those beliefs. So JD would also say to me, you know, when I was kind of not informed about racism and things like that, he would say, well, you might want to consider this. And that forced me to dig deeper, right? I mean, and
it also forces you to dig deeper when you're in a place where you're not so dysregulated, like in an argument or a debate or whatever.
Good point. That's a good point. I mean, my mom, I love my mom, and she's a good person. But I trace back in her lineage her father was, they describe it as he hung out at the pool hall, which means he drank. And, I loved him. I mean, like when I was a kid, we'd go do work and stuff together. But he was a real simple person. I don't know if he graduated from high school. They went, her parents, my mom's parents, went to a little country church out in the middle of nowhere. Their preachers were usually seminary students that were just there for a couple of years. They didn't, they weren't world travelers. They didn't study in depth about other religions and history and so on. And so that's what she received. But she's deeply committed to the beliefs and ideas of her father. My mom is, where anytime we've tried to have a conversation about that, it doesn't go well because he's just determined, because that's a belief. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you having strong beliefs, but they're not truth. They're not true. They're not facts. They're beliefs. They're assumptions that you make. And they're based on the assumptions of people that handed them to you, who got that from somebody else. And every once in a while, a guy like Augustine comes along and changes some things. But for the most part, you're just repeating history. And sometimes progressive theologians go back to Orthodox stuff and start there, but it's still based on the assumptions of those Orthodox predecessors. And so I think just realizing that freed me up so that I could go investigate some other things and find out about what Buddhism is all about and what different religions, totally different than me, thought. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to if you actually want to understand them. And even if you were totally just invested in proving Christianity to be the best religion or whatever, you would have to compare them to other religions. So you'd have to have a modicum of knowledge, at least, about those other things, which most of us, especially American Christians, have no idea.
Or if they do, it's based on something that is halfway not even true.
I was going to say, just maybe false information.
Yeah, they do that too. But it is interesting how, like, and I don't know if this really totally fits into it, but like, Karl, you were setting up a situation to where you have like these churches with, it's just a student teaching it, and sometimes it's just someone that maybe graduated high school and been around the pastor that was there, and they just keep passing this stuff along, but they've never challenged it, and it's just always 100% true. Those they're so dangerous, and to be in those situations, because I think just push comes to shove, everything's built ready to fall, and because of it, what ends up happening is, I guess, everybody ends up trying to defend their false assumptions like to the death. And many of us have already felt what happens from churches or denominations that don't like what we're saying, and that when we are challenging those assumptions, and they want you to get the hell out of there,
or they control you, right? And there's various ways to control people, and to some degree, all churches are cult-like, at least. And the more you study, the more you see it. And taking a step back, you can see that. I like what we've talked about several times in this podcast. Take away the indoctrination part of Christianity. I'm good with listening to speakers. I like listening to speakers. I like going to concerts and listening to music. And sometimes I enjoy being around people and getting what you can get from people. And I definitely love getting together with you two guys here. But I have no interest in Stuart preaching to me and telling me what to believe.
I'm out of here. That's the only reason I came today.
Let's talk about how we can love our neighbor. Let's talk about how we can stop gun violence. Share stories about our kids and things like that. Let's do that. Let's connect with each other. But remove the indoctrination, because you're indoctrinating them with your assumptions that you received from somebody else who's just making assumptions based on the information they had. And up until the 21st century, that information was really, really limited. Now we've got so much that we just retreat back into the hole of, well, I believe, and the Baptist faith and message and all those things. And the problem just marches on.
But I think it's out of comfort too, though. I think that they want to think that they have it all figured out. I mean, they want to be able to do that and kind of just turn off their brain and just go on cruise control. It's just as once you've realized that, you're fine. You know who to judge, and you're in your comfortable little safe space forever.
I got an email, not an email, a Facebook messenger this week from an old congregant. It's kind of like, Karl, I'm concerned about you. What am I seeing in these posts that you, it's from the Big Lake Church, JD.
Yeah.
And it's not someone you would think of, but, and she just said, you're convincing other people, you're putting it online and talking about, and drawing other people away from the faith. And I started talking about, with her through this message of, why and where and, what happened, and that I'd been hurt, and that there were things that I'm dealing with and getting my mental health back in line and all those things. And I just think differently. I don't believe the old assumptions and so on. And she said, then she just went right into, true believers. And even after I said, the people that hurt me were close family members and your daughter, that said they were true believers. They're really committed to this thing, and they believe, and they're the real Christians. Those are the people that hurt me the most. Mm-hmm. And she didn't really respond, but just doubled down on that fact that we got the right answers. We're right. God is on our side. And just kept kind of gaslighting me and so on. We never made much progress, but she said, then I'll pray for you. I said, if God is real, then he's got a lot, like someone said on TV, he's got a lot of splaining to do, and we kind of left it with that. And if God's real and you're a true believer and you can access him, then let him know that I need a lot of answers. He's got a lot of explaining to do. So anyway.
No, but I love it when people say stuff like this, like that, Karl, you're forcing people to fall away from the faith. Mm-hmm. As if like the faith is that much of, is their faith that much of a little bitch that, that they've got the God of the universe, but we've got Karl. And he's just picking them off one by one, peeling them off from the faith. Mm-hmm. And Christianity won't survive Karl. But it's just so funny, just about how thin-skinned these folks are about it. To where, oh my God, you're damaging the kingdom. Some of the pearls fell off of the pearly gates when you opened your mouth, Karl. They're feeling it up there, Karl. Stop, Karl.
What made it all better was one of JD's friends just wrote a book.
Yeah.
And he messaged me this week, had some questions about writing, and he wanted to share the book with me and see what I thought. It's just a great book that he wrote. And it didn't really mention Jesus. It wasn't defending a faith or anything like that. He was talking about his experience as a medic at a summer camp, and not the kind we talked about a few weeks ago, But, it was a Jewish summer camp, and that made my day, hearing from that kid, and he's not a kid anymore, but that he wasn't telling me that I'm the cause of, all of his friends not believing or whatever, but made my day.
Maybe you are, though, because you were the pastor of them when they were youths.
Yeah,
stealing souls for a long time, Dad.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, the people your age from those churches still are my Facebook friends. They still talk to me, and none of the adults do unless they think, have to give me a lecture about I'm all wrong and, their assumptions are right and I'm all.
Well, Karl, are you okay with being all wrong? JD and I came here for an intervention today.
Yeah.
About all that's going on.
I'm okay with being wrong as long as I'm on a journey of discovery.
Mm-hmm. Right down, folks. It's Karl Forehand. All right with being all wrong.
A new slogan.
All right. So ending on a good JD zinger.